Okay, so this is the sustainability triangle. There are three elements to true sustainable development. So the first one is that you need to develop the economy. So that is a gradual process of increasing the incomes and swelling the amount of money that you have going round and round in your country, and gradually making yourself richer. But the problem is that when people do this, they very often tend to do it at the cost of the environment. For instance, large-scale industrial development, but without consideration for the legacies that can leave behind, and that can cause damage to the environment. But also, if you try to drive the improvement in the economy, very often that can be sacrificing society to make all of that money. And the classic example of this is when you've got an improvement in the wealth of the few, very significant inequalities in wealth, and an awful lot of people remain poor. And so if we then consider trying to improve the environment, well, we can improve the environment, but it's very expensive to do that. And in fact, if you were going to really get into looking after the environment, then actually the best way to exist in your country would probably to be having an entirely agrarian, sort of farming-based economy, and everybody just is subsistence farmers, and you keep your population down and focus on existing with just the land mass that you have available, and so that again, it's not going to earn you an awful lot of money, and so then you end up with lots of issues around poverty-related diseases and ill health, and so that then has a knock-on effect on society. If we're trying to maintain society, then the idea of, I think you'd refer to it as trickle economics, where the money of the wealthy gradually trickles down to the masses of poor people and makes them slightly richer. So if we improve the well-being of and the wealth of the super wealthy, then everybody else will get a little bit more. Doesn't quite work. If we're trying to look after society, then we need to we can look after the other elements, certainly the economy, by trying to get the lowest common denominator, the poorest, the sort of base level of society a little bit wealthier. And if they're a little bit wealthier, then as they spend money, then cumulatively that's an awful lot of money, and so that can then push from the bottom up the wealth of all of the rest of the levels that sit on top of that lowest and poorest denominator of society. Another thing to note is that if you're looking after society, then there's no point in being rich if you're miserable. And so if you're going to get rich but you're working every hour that's available, and you lose all of the other aspects of your life, then yes, you might have some money washing about, you might be wealthy, but if you structure your environment so that it looks like that, your country so that it looks like that, then your society will suffer. People won't be as happy, you won't get a lot of the stuff that goes alongside wealth in order to make life happy and successful for other people. For people. So can you see how, I hope from this that you can see how if you're trying to achieve sustainable development, then you need to balance looking after the environment with looking after the economy with looking after society. And this is a really tricky balance to make. Normally the economy is prioritized over the environment and society, and so then you get the pushback from both. If you want to achieve true sustainable development in a successful way, then you need to balance all three elements. And this needs to be a very well thought out and coherent process. And so Scandinavia is probably the best place to look to in the world, where they've managed to keep these three elements of sustainable development very well balanced, and have succeeded in wealthy, prosperous and happy countries. At the time of recording this, I think Finland was the happiest country in the world. But the Scandinavian countries generally have a very good quality of life, as well as very good environment, environmental protection, and a very strong economy. So if you want to do some further reading, go and have a look at how they run things, and that's very useful to have as a template for other nations. But then take a look at what goes on elsewhere in the country, including your own country, elsewhere in the world, including your own country, and have a think about what we call a gap analysis. Take a look at what they're doing and what we could be doing, what we're doing now, and think about the differences that are involved, and how you, in your small part to play as an environmental health officer, can start to introduce some of those differences in your work.